Good day, class. In this video, we are going to continue the discussion on the formulae. We are going to introduce another category of the formulae. Because the limited time from the general introduction of Chinese materia medica, we didn't go through the whole materia medica, which means there are many herbal medicine that we didn't study, we didn't introduce. So it will make us a bit difficult to discuss the formulae. In this way, you won't be able to understand the functions of each single herb. If you are interested in, you are more than welcome to read to find the functions of these individual herbs in Materia Medica. For the general introduction to Chinese medicine formulae, you're going to focus on the general introduction in the previous few videos. For the specific discussion, especially from this video and further on, you may just use as a references. Try to use this discussion to order your mind on how to structure the formulae, and through the discussion, we will employ some cases, some example. Although we didn't introduce the full cases, we will introduce some common rule principles in traditional Chinese medicine that you can apply in your practice. For example, there's one principle that we always talk about the excess and deficiency. We also talk about the exogenous pathogens. In our general knowledge, that's from exogenous pathogens, in our knowledge from the basic theory, it's straightforward. For exogenous pathogens, we need to use some technique to eliminate the pathogens from sweating. So that's why we say dispersing. You can use from the skin, from the sweats. The first of the formulae we introduce is the sweating method. But there's another principle. The same pathogen, the same exogenous pathogens, if it happens in a patient, a deficient patient, we have to use the technique to tonify the middle jaw to make the antipathogenic qi strong before you use the sweating technique. So these are some principles that you also can apply in acupuncture practice. For example, if you want to treat a patient with a deficient patient, you can apply this kind of thinking. You're going to use stammer 36, room 6, room 4 to strengthen the middle jaw, or even room 12 before you treating other diseases, treating other causes or pathogens, or to eliminate other pathogens when you have to. So these are some principles that we will employ in our discussion. The first formula we are going to discuss in this video is 小柴胡汤. 小柴胡汤, 小 means small. 柴胡is the name of one materia medica. Tang is the decoction. We have 小柴胡汤. We also have 大柴胡汤. 大 means big. So these formulas, they come as in pairs. 小柴胡汤 is one of the most important formula in Shaoyang diseases. To harmonize the Shaoyang, there was one professor from Beijing University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. He said that after studying 伤寒杂病论, if you forget everything, however, if you only remember 小柴胡汤, he would think that he was successful. If he made you remember 小柴胡汤, if he made you that you can apply 小柴胡汤in your practice, he would consider himself as successful, although we knew that this is a joke. From this story, you will understand how important 小柴胡汤 is according to the professor. 小柴胡汤 it is used for 少阳 disease. 少阳 disease. In 伤寒杂病论, in the sixth meridian differentiation, we understand that the disease developed from 太阳 to 阳明 to 少阳. After 少阳, it will go to 太阴. So 少阳 is the last step of yang category. Traditionally, we describe 少阳 disease as half exterior, half interior. In yang category, in between the yang category and yin category, the half exterior and half interior. Although there, from the discussion, it actually emphasizes that 少阳 disease is not an exterior syndrome, which means if it is not an exterior syndrome, you cannot use sweating method. Half interior, it emphasizes that the 少阳 disease is not interior syndrome. For interior syndrome, we can use purging technique such as cause diarrhea. For example, Yang-Ming disease. Yang-Ming disease, the patient may present as fever, high-grade fever, the stomach ache, and most importantly, the patient will present as constipation. So those are interior syndrome. Yang-Ming Fu syndrome, 少阳 syndrome. 少阳 syndrome, the patient presents as some symptoms in between exterior and interior. So in this situation, 伤寒杂病论 described that we should not use sweating, we should not use purging, so you can't cause diarrhea in your formula. We also cannot use vomiting technique, although we didn't introduce vomiting in the Materia Medica. What kind of symptoms does 少阳 disease will have? Described that after 5 to 6 days after the pathogen attack, especially from the wind, the patient presents as the cold sensation and the heat sensation comes and goes. The patient presents as chest tightness. The patient have poor appetite. The patient feel irritation. The patient may present as vomiting or nausea. This is from the liver fire affects the stomach, causes the rebellion of stomach qi. The patient also may present as irritation without nausea. The patient may present as thirsty. The patient may present as abdominal pain or palpitation. The patient may present as difficulty urination. The patient may present as no thirsty. The patient may present as mild fever or cough. In this situation, you can use 小柴胡汤. All these symptoms that I have mentioned, we can actually explain from the basic theory. What happened to the patient? Which organs affect the other organ? Which organs do I mean as the other organs? So you can try to explain because we don't focus on the herbal medicine, we don't focus on the classic, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time to explain all symptoms. This is the way how we study the classics. When we study the classics, we need to explain each single symptom. For example, now in this clause, we said that thirsty, the patient may be thirsty. Why the patient will be thirsty? And now I also mentioned in the same clause that the patient may not be thirsty. Why the patient will present as no thirsty? Why the patient will have mild fever or cough? So we need to explain from the theory. That's how to study traditional Chinese medicine. You need to explain each symptom from the theory. You need to know the pathogenesis. Only in this way you can apply the formula correctly. The ingredients of 小柴胡汤：柴胡、黄芩、人参、半夏、甘草、生姜、大枣。On 少阳 disease. What does it mean by harmonizing the 少阳? One of the principles here is you need to know that the harmonizing 少阳, it has some, in this group of formula, the combination of expelling pathogens and tonifying the antipathogenic qi. So from one single formula, you will see at least two categories of the herbs. One category to dispel pathogen, the other category to tonify. 柴胡, pungent and bitter. Pungent can move something outwards, move yang qi outwards, move the organs outwards. Pungent can disperse. Pungent can activate. Fragrant also can activate. So when you put all these together, dispersing, activating, can eliminating the pathogens, especially when heat, because it's cold. When heat syndrome and the 少阳. Because it is pungent, it can activate the stagnation in the liver meridian. It is also the liver meridian entered. 黄芩, bitter and cold, eliminates heat and dry dampness, especially for the upper and middle jaw. When we study the materia medica, we go to 黄芩, 黄连, 黄柏. One is from upper and middle jaw, the other from middle jaw, and the other one is from the lower jaw. So these are the differences among these three herbs. Here we use 黄芩to eliminate the heat and purge fire at qi level. Qi level syndrome in wound diseases. Qi level syndrome, the patient will present as white coating, 少阳 disease, also qi level, coughing due to lung heat, certain miscarriage due to heat. 黄芩 also can be used to eliminate the fire and toxicity. In this formula, the author Zhang Zhongjing used 柴胡and 黄芩. The dosage is very important. The ratio between 柴胡and 黄芩is almost 3 to 1. So 柴胡 40 gram, 黄芩 15 gram. These two, when you use together, it can harmonize the 少阳. It can harmonize the 少阳 meridian and 少阳 organ. Because the coldness from the, especially for 黄芩, although 柴胡also cold, but slightly cold, 黄芩 can clear the heat in the gallbladder. So when we use 黄芩and 柴胡, it can help to remove the qi stagnation in the gallbladder. It also can clear the fire in gallbladder, the heat in the gallbladder. 半夏can resolve phlegm, can dry dampness. 半夏also can stop vomiting. So in the discussions, we have mentioned that this patient presents as nausea or vomiting. And the other one, ginger, 生姜. Ginger also can relieve the vomiting. So these two are warm and pungent, used for activating the stagnation, relieve vomiting, bring down, recover the qi, the stomach qi. The original text in 伤寒杂病论, it used 人参. However, from the clauses, experts believe that this kind of 人参 do not exist nowadays. So now we use different type of ginseng. If this patient presents as cold syndrome, we will use ginseng. So this is the Korean ginseng, which is sweet and warm. If the patient presents as heat, we will use American ginseng, sweet and cool. Sweet and warm can be used for cold condition. Sweet cool can be used for hot situation. These two kinds of ginsengs are quite expensive. So in our if the situation is not severe, we can use dangsheng. Dangsheng is another herbs that can tonify the qi, but the efficacy is not as strong as American ginseng or Korean ginseng. But the cost is much more acceptable. So that in our daily practice, we normally use dangsheng instead of the true ginseng. You also can use other whenever you see sheng. We also have other sheng. These are herbs that can tonify the qi. Most of them, but although not all of them, but most of them, such as taizisheng, mingdangsheng, we also can use to replace rongsheng here. But although we don't use the original rongsheng here, we understand that in this category already tonify the middle jiao, the qi. 柴胡 activate the stagnation, 黄芩 clear the heat. Those are purging, eliminating. When you go to this category, sheng can tonify. 大枣 these two are also tonifying. So you will see in this formula, although there are only 7 different type of herbs, they can put into at least 2 categories. One is eliminating, the other one is tonifying, and some herbs we use for specific symptoms. Jaundice is one of the examples we use here as the Shaoyang disease. When you see from the symptoms, nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, weakness, loss of appetite, these symptoms are very close to the description that I gave you at the beginning of this video from the clause of 小柴胡汤. Jaundice in traditional Chinese medicine, we understand from the liver stagnation, the gallbladder, the disharmony between the liver and gallbladder. Another explanation we have mentioned previously is from the spleen, but no matter from which explanations, we're going to focus on the liver, gallbladder, as well as the spleen. So 小柴胡汤 also strengthens the spleen, as from the 人参, 甘草, 大枣. Also focus on the gallbladder. So this is one of the most typical disease that is considered as Shaoyang disease. Liver, gallbladder. These are the 4. Clear the heat in the liver and gallbladder to eliminate the pathogens. 人参, 炙甘草, and 大枣, the last one, the dates, to tonify the spleen. 半夏 and 生姜, to remove or specifically to reduce the symptoms of nausea or vomiting. After the clause, just below the clause, the author also give us examples. If the patient doesn't have nausea, we can remove 半夏. If the patient have abdominal pain, we can remove 黄芩, we can add 芍药. If the patient presents as thirsty, we can remove 半夏. From these examples, we understand that although we study the formula as a group of materia medica, we will understand that we actually can remove some herbs, or we can add some herbs according to your specific requirements. These are the examples from 伤寒杂病论. So the main function of 小柴胡汤 harmonize the 少阳. Although here we mentioned a few disease names, like malaria, jaundice, and other diseases. The treatments from 小柴胡汤 is not only limited to malaria and jaundice. We can use all kinds of diseases that present as 少阳 syndrome. The second formula that we are going to study is 黄连解毒汤. 黄连解毒汤, there are 4 ingredients. 黄连, 黄芩, 黄柏, 栀子. In a few minutes ago, we have mentioned 黄芩. And I also have mentioned that the 3 黄, the 3 materia medica, which shares the same surname, 黄连, 黄芩, 黄柏. Firstly, the function of this formula is to purge the fire, to relieve or to clear the heat. It can be used for extreme heat condition. 黄芩, 黄连, 黄柏, one for middle jiao, upper jiao for lower jiao. So as you can see from here, this is one formula. They use 4 ingredients, but 3 of them go to different jiao. That's why, from the action of this formula, it describes that it can be used to clear the heat in all 3 jiao. This is also another principle that we can learn from the material from the formulae in acupuncture practice. When you see a patient presents as excess heat in the body, you also can see this different points from upper jiao, middle jiao, and lower jiao. This will enhance your efficacy. The last ingredient of this formula, 栀子. 栀子 is a flower, bitter cold. You also can relieve the heat. 栀子 also can enter the heart, so you also can relieve the heart. It can be used for irritation, or you also can be used for palpitation. If the patient presents as deficiency, you also can add some herbs to tonify the middle jiao to enhance the required qi. So these are some examples from the heat clearing 白虎汤. These a few formulae are all from 伤寒杂病论. 小柴胡汤, 黄连解毒汤, 白虎汤. 白虎汤 is the one for Yangming disease. Yangming disease, there will be a few key manifestations for the application of 白虎汤. Firstly, fever, high fever, thirsty, severe thirsty, sweating, severe sweating, and large and powerful pulse. So in Mandarin, traditionally, we say the indications of using 白虎汤, there are 4 big. High fever, so in Mandarin, we can quote big fever, high fever, big thirsty, big sweating, and big pulse, large pulse. So these are the 4 key manifestations of using 白虎汤: high fever, extreme thirsty, profuse sweating, and large and powerful pulse. The ingredients: 石膏, 知母, 炙甘草, 粳米. 粳米 is a kind of rice. So as you can see here, the rice can strengthen the middle jiao. 炙甘草 is the 甘草, can tonify, can harmonize the formula, can slow down. You also can sweet. 石膏, pungent and sweet, extremely cold. Extremely cold herbs can be used for extremely heat. Eliminate the heat in the Yangming meridian. That's why we say Yangming disease. When you select this function, you need to add 知母, mutual reinforcing. 石膏 also the lung and stomach meridian entered. You can relieve the lung heat. You can relieve the stomach heat. When you want to relieve the upper jaw, you can add 麻黄、杏仁、甘草。This is a 麻杏石甘汤, also from 伤寒杂病论。知母 bittersweet. So 知母 and 石膏 are mutual reinforcing. 白虎汤 it also can be used in wound disease in the Qi level, especially the patient presents as fever. 甘草 the property of warm property of 甘草 is mild. Dispel the coldness. This is not the dominant. More important, 甘草 sweet can harmonize. You can harmonize the middle jiao. You also can harmonize the herbs. The property of the herbs, as we said, the 石膏 is extremely cold. 甘草 can harmonize, can moderate. 六一散 六 means 6. 一 means 1. So from the title of this formula, it already describes the ratio of the ingredients. 2 ingredients in this formula, 华石 and 甘草. The ratio between 华石 and 甘草 is 6:1. So that's why it says 6:1 powder. 散 is a powder. 华石 can clear the heat, can induce urination. 甘草 can harmonize. 华石 sweet, neutral, and can increase urination, can clear the damp heat, can be used for diarrhea. This is very interesting in Chinese medicine. There's one technique, one approach that we can use for treating diarrhea. It says we induce diuresis to stop diarrhea. So we try to lead the body fluids from the urination instead of going from the intestine. So if you don't have enough fluids in the intestine, you can treat the diarrhea. That's why induced diuresis it can be used for diarrhea. This is one of the functions from 华石。甘草 the same indications to harmonize. This formula is very important to relieve the heat, especially the damp heat. So when you understand from these principles in your treatment from acupuncture, if a patient presents as diarrhea, what can you do? You can use stomach 25, 天枢. You also can use some points that can induce diuresis, such as 水风, 三阴交. These can help you to relieve or to treat the diarrhea. Thank you for your attention.